Hello my bunny besties. If you're new here, my name is Bunby. Welcome, and if you are returning, hi, how are you? It is so nice to see you again. We are back with another speed build, and today we are tackling the entire right side of Oak Hollow, our nostalgic suburban Halloween core island that we are building for this autumn season. And technically we still have 2 areas to work on at the back of the island, so don't worry just yet. We still have a few more builds coming to the channel, but today's project is huge, like probably the biggest build I've ever done, and it will include a villager neighborhood with 6 homes, the Able Sisters, a drive-in movie theater, a coastline farmers market, tons of forest filler, a micro pumpkin patch, and last but certainly not least, a little seaside picnic for Molly and her friends. It's going to be a doozy, but if you enjoyed today's video and get tons of inspiration from it, do be sure to leave a like and subscribe if you are not yet subscribed, as I would love to have you join our cozy community, but we don't have a second to waste, so let's dive straight into the build. While we change into our safety gear and start laying down the pathing, I do want to yap just a little bit about this area as a whole, but I mean, what's new? These videos are all just me yapping, but Oak Hollow does have suburban in the theme title, so I felt a lot of pressure to really deliver on that nostalgic feel for this neighborhood. Originally, I wanted this entire side of the island to just be villager homes, but I did run out of space for the Ables on the left-hand side of the island, and I also just really struggled a ton with how I wanted to do the villager home layout. In my head, I was envisioning a row of homes kind of like around a cul-de-sac, and then there would be a road that would lead to like a spooky decrepit house of the oldest villager on the island, Limburg, the old grouchy man. But plans have changed. I did do a bit of a pivot. We will no longer be bringing Limburg to the island. Yes, I know, I'll put a little pause here, get all your rejoices out, all your cheering. Feel free to clap in the comments down below that this dude is not being added to the island. I'm actually kind of sad, but at the same time, I just could not find a good spot for him, and I don't know, I felt like his house would look really out of place in this neighborhood. So instead, I consulted one of my moderators at Maples Cardigan over on Instagram. I absolutely love you so much, Megan. You are the best. But she gave me the recommendation of adding Goldie to the island, so Goldie will be added in her honor, and I am going to be bringing her onto the island as soon as I can. I'm trying to get Raymond to move out, but if you saw our previous build, you will know that me and Raymond got beef. We got beef, like for real. I'm ready to throw hands with this guy, but sadly, he does not want to leave yet. I don't know why I'm bullying him so hard, but he just is intent on staying. So we will have Goldie come onto the island at some point, but my plans for this island have changed a ton. I had to find a way to fit Ables, and there were still so many builds that I wanted to try and showcase, but as always, I was running out of room. The cul-de-sac would have simply just taken up way too much space, and I also did a cul-de-sac build over on Pottsfield, our previous autumn island, so I really wanted to try and do something different this time around. I decided instead to do kind of like miniature little streets, and as always, I was daydreaming the entire time about all the amazing items that Nintendo could have added to the game, like actual stop signs and maybe even like a minivan style car, just to kind of give us a third option from the like coupe and sedan styles that they already gave us, and maybe even adding like street signs, like actual little metal green street signs that you see whenever you drive through like suburban neighborhoods here in America. But regardless, I tried to do what I could with the space and the items that I had. I feel like this is different enough of a build that you can find some really good inspiration here, while also checking out the neighborhood that I did on Pottsfield for any extra inspo, which I will link to that video in the description down below so that you can go and check that out if you're new to the channel. I highly recommend it. But seriously though, this build changed so many times, and I feel like I was ripping my hair out at one point just trying to puzzle piece it all together. I feel like my entire creative process is me running around trying to figure things out, screaming and just acting like the whole room is on fire, and the next thing I know, the whole build is done and it looks good. And I feel like that's why I struggle to like really capture my entire design process, because a lot of it is just me panicking until finally I'm like, oh wait, I got it all figured out. So this was no different. I just knew for sure that I really wanted to include a drive-in movie theater on the island, and that's been a build that I've literally always dreamed of doing for such a long time after seeing Newt Horizons, aka Nat, here on YouTube feature a build like that on her channel. I think it was like 3 years ago that she did that or something. I don't know, it was a really long time ago, and I can't seem to find the video where she built it, but just know that it was incredible, and I wanted to try and capture something very similar here on Oak Hollow. But I also recently watched Kaylee Games feature one on her island, Cobweb, which is a 30-day Halloween island challenge that she's been working on. It is super cool. If you have not checked it out, it is literally such a cool island. It's Halloween kidcore, and I just love it so much, so that will be linked down below as well. But the way that she built out her theater on that island was so cool. It was more of like a public park versus the one that we're going to be building is going to be a lot more of like a parking lot. But I am also contemplating a little bit of an island challenge soon, so do let me know in the comments down below if you would like to see me complete an entire island under a crunch time. But as we are laying more pathing, I just want to talk a little bit about the other builds that we're going to be working on today. So the neighborhood itself is quite small, especially for featuring 6 whole villager homes, which is kind of crazy, and the yards that I've given everyone are super tiny if you couldn't already tell. I think there's only like 5 tiles between the homes and only 3 tiles in front of the homes, so they are kind of like splitting a side yard and only have like 2 actual tiles that we can decorate in the front yard. So if you're working with a small area on your island, hopefully I can show you some cool ideas for some villager yards. But yeah, I tried to decorate all of the yards based off of the personalities and the backstories that I've given the villagers, which we will get into later, because as always I have quite the story to go along with these villagers. But once again, we'll get to that when we start filling all of this in, so do be sure to stick around. But I also decided to work a little differently with this video and showcase the entire top half of the build completely, so that way you weren't just watching 10 straight minutes of me laying pathing. You gotta love city core islands, am I right? But I really wanted this to feel like a community here in the neighborhood, so of course it will be all decked out for Halloween and trick-or-treating. We'll have a little party going on, which is definitely getting me in the mood for Halloween. Here in Florida, it's actually been a little bit chilly, which is really nice, and at the time of you watching this video, I have a Halloween event at my work that I will be at, which I'm super excited for. I plan on dressing up as the Sanrio character Cinnamoroll, and this was a very last minute costume because I only just found out about this event. But as Halloween approaches, I would love to hear what you have planned. Do you have a costume this year? Or if not you, does anyone in your family have any costumes planned? I love hearing how people like to dress up, so do feel free to let us all know down below. I think I might try and stream a little bit on Halloween, and maybe I'll even wear my Cinnamoroll costume just so I can show you guys. But if you haven't checked out my streams before, I highly recommend it. I stream every single Friday on Twitch, and sometimes I even showcase sneak peeks at some upcoming builds. On my previous stream, we worked on this build together for a little bit, and I even had Kaylee Games and one of my moderators, Moopa Creations, join for some goofy pictures, which I'll pop up on screen right here. And it was just overall such a fun time. So do be sure to check me out at @CozyBunby on Twitch, or you can find all of my links in the description down below. But it was seriously so much fun just being able to walk around this build with all of you and get some pieces of advice on some of the problem areas that I was having. So thank you to everyone who hung out. It was so cool seeing people say that they were watching me on YouTube and decided to check out a stream, so do be sure to stop by and say hello. But as for what I'm working on currently, we are just laying down some different design codes for the pathing of the yards. I didn't want the yards to be like super organized or overly paved or anything, because I felt like if you drive through or walk around an actual neighborhood, especially a really well-established neighborhood that maybe has been existing for a couple generations, you'll find that the homes are a little less manicured, not like in a messy way, but more of like in a lived-in sort of way. So I thought that having these dirt codes leading to the doors of the homes in different patterns would be kind of where like the grass has worn down from years of walking. Like, think about how many times you have trudged up to your front door after a hard day of school, or maybe you're bringing up all of your groceries and you've probably walked in the same spots over and over, which of course over time would wear down the grass. And I feel like filling these yards out like this also helps to make them appear a lot bigger than they actually are. Like I've mentioned earlier, we are working in sort of a micro build style for these yards, meaning that every single tile has to have a big impact. When it comes to laying down pathing like this, I like to think of, you know, like what items am I going to be placing down, but also which tiles can actually be used, since the AoE around the homes can be a little bit finicky. Technically, you can't place anything near the door, but if you place an item and then drag it close, you can kind of have something near the door. The houses can be really frustrating to work with, but you just have to be a little bit selective and it'll all come together slowly but surely. I knew when working with these yards that I really wanted to do a bit of environmental storytelling, meaning that I wanted you to be able to walk through the neighborhood and know exactly who lived in which house, and to get an idea of who these people are based off their yards, or I guess who these animals are based off their yards. These villagers, creatures, the critters that live in Okalu, who they are. I would say that this part of the build process is the most frustrating because it's really hard to know what types of codes to even put down and where to put them, because you don't know which items are going to be placed where. But now that we have all of the codes placed down, we can actually start working on the yards, which I am so excited for. We're going to be starting with Sheldon's yard, and if you did watch our planning video, then you'll know that Sheldon was not originally on the list of villagers that I was going to be bringing to the island. That list has changed quite a bit, but he did move on to the island as an autofill, and I decided to keep him because he fit the vibe, and I also realized that we didn't really have a jock villager, which in my head, when I think of like the quintessential coming of age show or like nostalgic movie, there's always like a popular jock, like star football player type of character. And even though I don't think Sheldon is necessarily the most athletic looking villager, I think he's really cute and I feel like he fits the vibe of Oak Hollow. So his yard is of course decked out with a lot of sports gear, which is super fun to use because I've never actually gotten a chance to use like the basketball hoop before, and I feel like it fits perfectly. But now we are working on Biscuit's house and yard, which I love how this one turned out so much. I think it might be my favorite. Biscuit is of course a lazy villager who has a bit more of a childlike personality, so I decided to give him a very cluttered yard. I put down a box of model kits, like maybe Biscuit is really into action figures and those boxes are set out for the trash because he just got some or something like that, I don't know. And I also included a driveway because in my head Biscuit is one of the younger villagers on the island, so maybe that's like his dad's car or something. But I have different age ranges for all of the villagers. Like Sheldon, Kat, and Goldie are probably all high school seniors or juniors. Meanwhile, Biscuit, Anchovy, and Molly are most likely freshmen or possibly even younger, like maybe 8th graders. And as for the other villagers on the island, Bee and Anaconda are probably in their like mid to late 20s, and meanwhile Fauna in my head is like in her 30s. She just gives me like a little bit of like a more like established adult vibe, so I feel like she's probably she's settled into herself, you know, she's just living, running her little flower shop, just doing her own thing. And then I would say the oldest villager on the island is probably Admiral. I'm imagining that he's in like his 60s, and I did not feature his home in this build because I have a secret little area for him that you guys will see in the island tour, but he runs like a little boat mechanic shop. I'm really excited for y'all to see that. But I tried to decorate the younger villagers' yards to really reflect their ages and their personalities. Like now we're working on Anchovy's home, and in my head Anchovy is a bit more of a sheltered kid, a bit more sensitive maybe, so there really isn't much of his stuff out in the yard, and instead his parents probably run a bit of like a stricter home where, unlike Biscuit, his stuff stays in his room. He's a bit tidier. Meanwhile, Biscuit is probably a bit louder and more playful. But in the storyline that I have created for this island, Biscuit and Anchovy are childhood best friends who have always lived across the street from each other and have been the best of friends since day one, and they've maybe always kind of been the weird kids in the neighborhood who get picked on by the older kids like Sheldon and Kat. But one day the house next to Anchovy's goes on the market and is bought by Molly's family. But maybe Molly is a bit more sheltered too, like maybe she's a homeschooled kid who didn't have a lot of friends growing up, and now she's in this new town and she doesn't know anyone. So when she meets Anchovy and Biscuit for the first time, they quickly become best friends. They're like the three musketeers, even though Molly has nothing in common with them and is also probably way too smart for these boneheads, but she doesn't really care because they're nice and they all enjoy hanging out, which you will see nods to that when we build out the picnic next to Molly's home. But this was a reason for why Molly's house also looks a bit more manicured. In my head, the house is still fresh off the real estate market, and I feel like when people sell a home, they always do like fresh landscaping and renovations to make it look nicer. So her house doesn't really have too much personality because of that, and also because she has like the smallest sliver of yard space, which is why I decided to instead extend her decorations onto the beach a little bit. I felt like I could put a lot more personality onto the beach and also take up some of the beach coastline space that I would need to decorate, which is always a little bit of a nightmare. But while I was working on this storyline, all I could think of is the movie Monster House, which Oak Hollow takes a lot of aesthetic inspiration from. And it's actually kind of crazy how much Anchovy, Biscuit, and Molly actually look like the three main characters, DJ, Chowder, and Jenny. And in my head, I feel like Kat also kind of looks like the older sister of DJ a little bit. Like, it's kind of wild actually. But Monster House is the reason why I wanted to have Limburg on the island. I know he was a wild choice to choose for the villager lineup, but I kind of wanted to give Limburg the spooky, creepy old man house, like the same vibe as, I think the old guy's name is Mr. Nevercracker or something from Monster House, but I feel like they also look really similar, so I was gonna try and pull onto that vibe like here on Oak Hollow. But once again, Limburg was voted off the island, Total Drama Island style, and was instead replaced by Goldie, who I feel like has a bit more of like a popular girl look. Like maybe her and Sheldon have a little something going on, but yeah, I don't know. I think it's a fun little vibe. I'm trying to really pull into like, once again, that just like classic quintessential like high school nostalgia vibe going on for the island. But I'm just walking you guys through the changes that I've made to the roadway. I went through and extended them one tile out so that way we could have a little bit more room to walk. I was really struggling with being able to get past those curved street lamps, which I love that item so much. It's my first time ever using them, but they do have some weird dimensions because of how it's technically one tile wide, but it looks like it should be half a tile because you have to kind of like scoot it around, and the curved bit makes it stick out more. It's a whole thing, but I went through and I think you'll see me kind of push those back a little bit later. But we're working on this picnic area right now, which I love this area so much. If you know me, you know that when in doubt, put a picnic in a spot. If you're struggling with it, just go for it. And for this picnic, I decided that I really wanted to play up the idea of Biscuit, Anchovy, and Molly being friends. So this green blanket right here is supposed to be like a kind of pumpkin carving area because I felt like I didn't really have room to put that type of stuff, and I wanted to include more Halloween type items. But this red blanket right here is actually going to feature a little card game, because in my head I'm thinking that, like, I don't know, Anchovy and Biscuit are probably like your classic nerds. They love action figures and superheroes and card games, and the board game item in game looks just like a game of Magic the Gathering. And so I thought maybe they play Magic the Gathering and they force Molly to play with them, and she has no idea what she's doing or what it's about, probably doesn't even care that much about it, but her friends care about it and she's a good friend, so she's gonna play with them. I thought that was kind of funny. But we're setting up the actual kind of like carving station right here, and I was just going through and trying to layer up as many items as possible to really make this look like a picnic. I just love trying to see how many items I can fit in these tiny areas. It's almost like a micro build in and of itself, and so I wanted to make sure we had an area to actually carve pumpkins, but then of course it's still supposed to be a picnic, so I wanted to include some picnic type items. And I used the Moroccan footrest right here, which I never use that item, and I need to start using it more because I love it so much. It is such a good item for these little picnic builds because it just looks so like enjoyable to sit on. I don't know, it looks nice. I like that item a lot actually. But I included some little apple juices and things off to the side as well because we will be featuring an apple orchard somewhere. You know, I can't do an autumn island without having an apple orchard on it. But we're going through now and just putting in those finishing touches. As you saw, I put down the card game, and I'm trying to fill in these little tiny spots as much as I can. When the beaches start to get really narrow in these areas, it's really hard to figure out where you can actually put stuff. But that is actually kind of it for this part of the build. I really didn't add too much past the vertical board fencing just because, like I said, the beaches get really narrow and it's hard to place stuff, so I just put down some wheat fields and I will fill in the rest probably off camera. But now we are moving on to Kat's house, and I know that I said that Biscuit's house is my favorite, but I fear I might have to retract that statement because Kat's house is just so fun. It has a lot of personality, and I think I still like Biscuit's the most, but I feel like Kat's just has the most story going on. Of course, Kat is a sisterly villager, so in my head she's probably one of the older teenagers in town who's a bit more of like a delinquent, probably a little bit of a rebel, maybe a burnout even. And I went through and tried to just give her a very kind of like trashy yard. Maybe Kat is the child of a single parent who works at the diner, and maybe Kat is just like left to her own devices a little bit too much, and so she doesn't really take care of the house. The trash piles up a little bit. As you saw, I added the lawnmower in the wheat fields as if maybe like the yard is overgrown and she's supposed to mow it. She started, but she gave up because she's got better stuff to do, you know? She's got parties to attend to, she has places to be, things to do that do not include mowing the lawn. But I also went through and gave kind of like the more like trashy, messed up car because maybe she has like a little lemon that she drives around. And it was just so fun going through and just making her personality shine through this build. These types of villagers that have kind of these more I don't really care type of attitudes, it's fun to decorate their yards because you can really just add whatever and use items that you may not have used before, like the garden gnome with the kind of like leather biker jacket. I've never used that item, but it was so fun. I felt like it really matched with Kat's personality. But as you can see here, I'm going through and moving around those street lamps like I mentioned earlier just to give you more space to walk around this build. And I'm trying to go through and clutter up this sidewalks. It was a little difficult because I didn't want to cover up the sidewalks too much, but I wanted to add some decoration decorations so that it looks more lived in. But I'm going through now and trying to kind of frame out this street with those trees. And we're actually working on Goldie's house now. So technically this is Raymond's house. I did just go through and update the exterior to look like what I want Goldie's house to look like. And in my head, Goldie is probably a bit more of like the popular girl, but not necessarily the mean girl. Like maybe her family is also on the stricter side, like anchovies, and she's just a bit more sweet, like girl next door type. And even though she has some Halloween decorations outside of the house, as you see here, I added the cornucopia because maybe her family is a bit more into like the like Thanksgiving decorations. I know sometimes I'll like drive around my town and instead of having like scary pumpkins and skeletons in the yard, sometimes people have like inflatable turkeys in their yards to celebrate for like Thanksgiving, which is definitely something. It's a vibe. It's not my vibe, but it is a vibe. So I decided that that's kind of what I was gonna go for with Goldie's house. I am still, of course, decorating it for Halloween. Like as you can see here, I'm going through and putting some trick-or-treat stations outside of Kat and Goldie's houses because I mean, who doesn't want to participate in a little bit of trick-or-treating? And I still really want this whole neighborhood to feel like it's celebrating, having a little bit of a block party. That's why I decided to go through and layer up the spooky arch with the trees and the party lights. I feel like it gives a really cool vibe as if like everyone's decorating, and it has more of like, I don't know, maybe this is the neighborhood that all the kids talk about where you can get like the full-size candy bars, and walking through here is a lot more of like an experience versus just walking down the street to go trick-or-treating, if that makes sense. I don't know about you guys, but there was definitely some neighborhoods in my town growing up where you could just like you knew that those were the neighborhoods where they were going all out. Every house was going to be decorated. Some of them might have even had like a scary house type of thing that you could walk through. I know some of the houses growing up in my neighborhood, they would like deck out their garage to be like an actual like scary house that you could walk through and you had to get to the end to get the candy. I never went through those because I am definitely a scaredy cat. I do enjoy horror, but I also scare really easily, and it's like I have enough anxiety in my everyday life that like I don't need to like self-impose anxiety on myself by going through a scary house. No thank you. I will not be going to Halloween Horror Nights. I applaud anyone who can, but I am not one of those people. But I do enjoy a spooky movie every now and then. I enjoy scary stories and listening to like stuff from r/no sleep or creepypastas and things like that. But I don't know, I like playing scary games too, like playing Resident Evil and Little Nightmares and things like that. I'm more of like, I enjoy watching people play scary games. I struggle playing them. I get too scared. But to focus back on the build, I'm working on the actual little block party side of things, and I'm going through and setting up a little pizza table. Now, if you've seen our Pottsfield build where we did something very similar at the cul-de-sac, you'll know that this is kind of like a nostalgic thing for me because the neighborhood I grew up in used to do pizza parties during Halloween, but I tried to do a little bit of a different take on it this time and still feature something similar, but kind of layer things up a little bit more and just cater it to the actual like neighborhood layout that we have going on here. But that is kind of everything for this little neighborhood area. As you can see, Raymond is chilling in the background, sweeping around in a yard that does not belong to him. Technically on paper it does, but I am so ready to get that guy out of here. It's funny because I have plans of an island in the future where he is going to be a villager on that island. It's going to be a dark academia island, so all of the villagers are more like monotoned, like grayscale, darker type of looking villagers, and he's gonna be on there. But now I'm like, I don't know, do I even want to do that island anymore? Because Raymond's gonna be on it and he is enemy number 1 on my list. But yeah, it was actually kind of funny hearing how many people also don't like Raymond. During stream, he was walking around and I had to step away for a second, so I told everyone to bully him in the chat, and y'all delivered. Y'all delivered for sure. Someone said that he looked like the person at the head of HR in a company that just throws away all the HR complaints, and like I couldn't agree with a statement more. That is literally so true. Like he looks like he would be on your supervisor's side and not your side if you were dealing with something at work. But all of that aside, as you can see, we are laying down the pathing for the second half of the build, and I am seriously so excited for you guys to see this area come together. So of course I'm just going through and laying down all of the pavement and everything, filling in the sidewalk, and now we're going through and putting down the actual code for the parking lot itself. This is a very similar layout to the one that we did by the fall festival, and I was like, I want to add another parking lot because it feels very city core, but I want to try and find a way to kind of make it a little different and a little bit more usable. But I was struggling a bit in this area because do you see this? Do you see what Biscuit is doing to me right here? He just kept on walking. He was like, you know what? You're in the way. I'm walking here, you're in the way. And I was like, are you serious? I'm building you a drive-in movie theater and this is how you treat me? Like, the villagers on this island are just out for me. I don't know what it is, I don't know what I did to them, but they were all just swarming me this entire build. It was actually really difficult to get some stuff done, especially when we start working on the beach area, because Biscuit and Admiral just decided that it was all about them, that it was their world and I was just living in it. But yeah, it was still really fun to work in this area. I think working around this neighborhood where all of the villagers are kind of hanging around their homes, I don't know, made it to where I didn't feel like I was working on this build by myself. I had all these little goofy guys walking around, like Sheldon here, just strolling throughout. But yeah, I'm going through and adding all of the smaller details to the roadway area. I am doing the road in the 3-tile wide style that I've been doing for most of the island, so that way I can have the median lines in the middle of the road. And then I also added a little crosswalk at the end, so that way you could walk between the parking lot and the 𝒷𝓊𝓃𝓏 sisters. And I just really feel like this area kind of closes itself in very nicely. It's very difficult, I feel like, to kind of transition from the land into the beach area, but when you're working with a city core island, you can kind of just like end a road and then it works. It looks like it's supposed to go there. But I'm going through now and kind of brushing away some of the coding so that we can add some trees, because once again, I feel like this is a great way to make an area really feel lived in and kind of take away from the monotony of just seeing a bunch of gray pavement in a city core island. So I'm going through and adding all this texture with these trees. But now we're moving on to the 𝒷𝓊𝓃𝓏 sisters shop, and I really like how this area turned out. It's very simply decorated. I didn't want to go too crazy because I didn't really have much room. As you can see here, I'm only working with a couple of tiles in front of 𝒷𝓊𝓃𝓏's, and so I was like, what the heck am I gonna do here? And I just decided to decorate it like it's just a regular store. So you'll see me decorate it with some costumey items right here. I'm going through and adding a little candy bowl, and I have some really cute design code outfits that I just can't wear. I don't have enough time to wear all of these outfits that I saved, and so I thought it could be fun to showcase a couple of them outside the store, as if you can, like, I don't know, come and get a little festive sweater or something like that. And of course we have to add a little spot to park your bike, because I assume that this is a town that is very like walkable. You know, not everyone needs a car, you can just get around town on a bike. And so I have that set up, and we have some costumes here on this stall area, but we are just going through and placing the usual items along the sidewalk, some curved street lamps, some garden benches, some steel trash cans, just so that we can go through and fill up these sidewalks a little bit. I feel like it's a great way to kind of integrate all of these builds with the rest of the city core stuff that we have going on Oak Hollow. But now we are moving on to the actual movie theater build, and I'm so excited. So I decided to go through and start by layering some plain lights party arches, or some plain party lights arches at the back, and I am layering some curtains in front of them, almost to make it look like the projection screen is actually a little bit longer. And then I added, of course, the projection screen item there, which is definitely an interesting one to add. I wish that you could go through and choose which movie was playing based off of a customization or something, because it was kind of annoying that there was like a tennis game going this whole time. I really want there to be like a spooky movie playing or something, but I don't know if there is one that will play at some point in the game. But I totally rambled over the fact that I went through and added a little popcorn machine, and I have a little stand table set up in front of it with a popcorn snack item, where maybe like you can come up and pay a couple dollars and get a bucket and a soda, and then you can hang out in your car and watch the movie, you know, just the whole movie theater vibe. I don't know, I've never been to a drive-in movie theater before, so I don't know if that's how they work, but I would assume something along those lines. But I just went through and I outlined the entire area with the iron and stone fencing. I added an actual little projector so that it looks like it's actually projecting the movie, and now we can go through and start filling in the parking spots with some cars. So I'm layering a mixture of cars and seats, so that way you can actually come and like sit down in this area. And I'm also doing a different mixture of cars, so we have some of the regular cars and then we have some of the luxury cars. And I'm going through and I added a little movie poster and some spooky lanterns, just of course to give it that Halloween vibe. And I'm going through and layering up some cushions for the area. But that's pretty much it for the drive-in movie theater, and I would like to move to the beach. However, these two decided to stand here and yap and block my way completely. So I decided instead to move on to some filler and just kind of go through and zhuzh these areas around a little bit, just because I I want to apologize, goodness gracious, if you can hear a loud car in the background. I feel like I need to rant about this really quickly. I don't even know if you could have heard what just happened, but a giant souped up truck decided to rev its pretty little engine right outside my window, and the way that that happens so much whenever I record a voiceover, I swear it only happens when I'm recording voiceovers. The lawn service decides to show up. Every single person in my apartment complex that drives a lifted truck decides that they just have to go as fast as they possibly can out of the apartment complex. Or there's like 3 people here that have motorcycles that just decide to just drive around in circles outside the apartment complex, and I'm like, please, some people have things that they need to do, and that includes voiceovers for YouTube videos. Like, not to be that person, but the biggest pet peeve of mine in the whole world is people with loud vehicles, because it's like there is no point to having a loud vehicle other than the fact that you want other people to know that you exist. And it's like there are better ways to let people know that you exist. You could be a kind person. You could offer something to the world that has substance instead of offering the exhaust from your truck. I just don't understand it in the slightest. Like, goodness gracious, all of these vehicles are so loud, and I do apologize if you ever hear anything going on in the background. It's just, I feel like I just needed to get that off my chest. It's been something that's been weighing me down for so long. But thank you for attending my TED Talk. I appreciate it. I don't understand why it's whenever I'm just trying to record a video, just chilling in my office, doing my own thing. But thank you guys for always listening to my silly little rants. We are working on these filler areas, and there really wasn't much for me to talk about with these areas. I usually don't feature my filler as an actual like build part. I kind of just like gloss over what I do for the filler anyway, or I'll walk you through what everything looks like when it's filled in. But I did want to go through and kind of show you guys my process, and I decided to showcase behind Molly's house and next to Goldie's house with what I decided to put in those tiny little filler spots. And it really is just a mixture of trees at various growth stages, flowers, shrubs, wheat fields, and then maybe the miscellaneous little maple leaf pond or like a little fallen over tree or something like that. But that's pretty much it for these areas. I just wanted you to be able to see the actual process of me putting these together. So yeah, like I said, it's mostly just going through and placing a collection of trees and flowers and shrubs and wheat fields. I try and keep it quite minimal because I feel like if you add too much stuff to these areas, not only is the lag going to be really bad, but you aren't going to see a lot of the actual stuff in the filler because the trees are covering up a lot of it. It's another reason why I decided to add so much filler to this area, especially around the movie theater. We have it behind the theater and off to the side because I wanted to break up the sight lines between the neighborhood and the beach area. I really wanted the parking lot theater to kind of feel like its own build. That way, if you decide to come visit the island and you want to take pictures at the movie theater, you aren't getting all these sight lines coming in from the neighborhood, or if you're walking along the beach, then it really helps to make it feel like a separate build from this one. I feel like sometimes if there's not enough definition of space between builds, they can kind of feel like they're connected, and when they're not supposed to be, that can make things feel a little bit out of place. So going through and having these separations of space can be really important. I also decided to add a little filler area behind the Able sisters because once again, I'm just trying to fill in those areas, trying to have a little bit of separation of space, and that's kind of how I've been lining all of my streets here on the island anyway. So I really wanted to make sure that I kind of kept a consistent theme going throughout the builds. But we are officially moving on to the beach. We're back to some pathing, and I am really happy with how this beach area turned out. It's very cluttered, I will admit, but I kind of love it for that. So this whole area I was envisioning to be kind of like a beachfront restaurant strip where you can go and kind of have like a little bit of a romantic date and maybe go sit by the seaside or the lakeside, because it technically in this island the ocean is supposed to be a giant lake, and you can get some nice food and spend some good time with some friends or family or a loved one. But then I went through and was like, okay, I can't really fit any restaurants because the beach here is quite narrow, so instead I decided to turn it into a farmer's market that still kind of has like an area where you can sit and eat. And as you can see here, we have the campsite on the beach as well, and in my head the campsite kind of looked like a stall before the stall has been set up completely, so maybe someone is still in the process of getting their farmer's market stall together. I feel like it's so difficult trying to go through and figure out what the heck to do with the campsite because it's such a weird building. I guess it is technically a building in the confines of the game, but yeah, it's a difficult one to try and integrate into any build style, and I wish that there was kind of an option to not include it on the island. Like, I think technically you can not have the Able sisters on your island if you just, I don't know, never convince them to come to the island, but you kind of like have to get the campsite, and I feel like the campsite is honestly, out of all the buildings, the hardest one to integrate, because like, what the heck are you supposed to do with that except just make it a campsite, you know? So I try to think outside of the box as much as I can with that to try and give different options for what you can do for the campsite. I know on Pottsfield the campsite was part of a pie eating contest, like it was supposed to be like a concert stage, and then for Bleakmore I think I did just have that set up as an actual campsite, and then for this island obviously it's the prerequisite for a farmer's market stall. But of course I'm just rambling over all of the path laying. It's pretty much a lot of the same stuff that we've been doing. I decided to bring some of the sidewalk actually onto the beach to give it more of a structured look and integrate it a little bit better with the city core builds that we've been working on. I also added the deck code that we were using over at the fall festival as part of like this beachfront wharf like shopping fishing district thing that we're going to be building. And I'm also decorating the dock area where Captain is just chilling in the boat, because I'm going to give Captain his own little stall as well, which I think is actually pretty funny. But we're going through now and adding some more like final finishing touches for the code. I'm adding a couple of dirt spots here and there, and now we can move on to the actual decorating part and we can really see this whole beachfront area come together. So I'm just starting with the little campsite area, and I decided to really clutter this spot up with a lot of just random boxes and wheat fields and things, because I don't know, it felt like it matched the vibe a little bit. This area is a little bit more rustic compared to the rest of the beachfront, so maybe someone just left their stuff here, who knows? But I really like how this area turned out, especially adding the little like stacked boxes that have the pumpkin design on them, because of course this is a Halloween island, so there's gonna be some shipments of some pumpkins and stuff coming in here. But I really like how this area turned out. I feel like it was a good way to really find a spot for the campsite and work it into the landscape that we were working with. But now we are working on the entrance area to the farmer's market. So I'm going through and layering up hedges with decorative pillars, and I put the little plasma ball on top, which I saw another creator, I can't quite remember who it was, but I saw another creator here on YouTube do that trick to make the decorative pillars look like substantial lampposts, and I thought it was so cool. So I've been doing that for like all the decorative pillars here on the island. But I layered up a castle gate, and now we're going through and putting in some more iron and stone fences. It was kind of hard because there's that weird curve going on to the coastline itself, and if I just kept it a straight line I would have had no room for extra decorations. So that's why I decided to go through and kind of have this weird layering effect going, but it'll look more natural once we add some items down there. I'm going through and building out a little veggie stall for maybe a little farmer who is actually setting up with all of their crops for the autumn season. Maybe you can come here and get some stuff for Thanksgiving, for your Thanksgiving feast of sorts. And now I'm building this area with this little storefront. So originally I was thinking about making this like a milk stall, like you could come here and get some like fresh dairy, but then I decided that's a little bit weird. Maybe saving that for more of like a spring core island. It didn't seem like it really fit a little bit here, so instead I decided to kind of make it a little bit of a bakery. That's why I have like the bread and stuff out front. I didn't really decorate it too much, but I put the stone oven behind it to maybe look like they're doing some fresh baking here on site, and then I added the dessert case just to really kind of like pull it all together. But then you can see Biscuit in the background has a thought bubble over his head, and I was literally gonna cry. Like, I did not mean to bully him earlier for being in my way so much. Like, I would rather him be here on the island and in my way than living anywhere else, so that made me really sad. I was really trying so hard for that thought bubble to transfer over to Raymond, and it would not. It would not. Biscuit was intent on leaving, but I just ignored him. I didn't talk to him because I got scared. But now we're just going through and adding those more decorative details down below. I added a couple of small covered tables and turkey day chairs to kind of fill out the area for, you know, just like a little like beachfront restaurant vibe, boardwalk style. You can sit out there and enjoy some of your baked goods, and I tried to like fill the area in with some more street lamps and things like that. It, like I said, looks a little bit cluttered. I don't know, it feels a little clunky down there, but I also like how it looks, so I think I'm gonna keep it no matter what. I just think that those little seams where you can see that there isn't a fence connecting those areas does bother me a little bit, but I couldn't fit any fences in those spots. But we are now working on the little fishing stall area, so I decided that this is probably a little bit more of like a permanent structure since the dock is right here as well. Like maybe this is Captain's shop that he runs, but he would much rather lounge in his boat than be a little landlubber or whatever they're called. Is it landlubber? I don't remember. It's like something that pirates say. But yeah, I'm going through and adding these little like shacks and things and just trying to layer it up so it looks like maybe there's an area where you can like take the fresh catches and things like that and maybe like gut the fish and scale them, and then I don't know, then they're clean. You don't have to like do that in the open air or something like that. But I'm going through now and adding this stall for Captain. So I need to pull the stall over like one tile, I think, just so that way the stall actually encompasses him and it looks like he's like sitting behind it. But I really liked adding the fresh fish trays. I've never used that item before because I have never found a reason to, but it kind of made sense in that build, and I don't know, there's just something about it. It's very simply decorated, but I really like how it looks. But that's kind of everything for this boardwalk area. We only have one more part of the build to work on, and then that's going to be everything for this whole half of the island. It feels crazy that we've filled out this area already so much in just one video. I appreciate you guys for sticking around for such a long one, but we are now working on a little micro pumpkin patch because I felt like we needed more pumpkin patches on this island. We are gonna have a full large pumpkin patch in our next speed build. I have a very fun build planned and I seriously cannot wait for you guys to see it. I'm so inspired, but I decided to do a little warm up by doing this micro pumpkin patch right here, and it is exactly what it sounds like. It's just a little pumpkin patch. I decided to use some more spooky chairs and some gyroids and things just because it is a beachfront area. I feel like gyroids just fit so well on the beaches. And yeah, I really hope that you guys enjoyed this video and all of my rambling. I feel like I went a little crazy there at the end with my car rant, but thank you all so much for watching and hanging out. I really appreciate all of you so much and all of the inspiration that you guys give me and all the sweet comments that you guys leave me. I feel like we've had so many people join this community lately, and I'm just seriously so happy seeing all the new faces here and connecting with so many cool people and hearing about all the islands that you guys are working on. So as always, please tell me what you are working on for this autumn season, or if you're taking a little bit of break, if you're dealing with any burnout. I know how it can be sometimes, but this is everything for this speed build, so let's go take a look at the beauty shots. Alrighty, my bunny besties, that is everything for today's speed build. I once again really hope that you enjoyed watching this and seeing so many different builds featured in one video. I contemplated cutting this video in half, but I think I would rather showcase a longer video for you guys since my upload schedule has been a little bit sporadic versus kind of pushing things out over the next couple of weeks with multiple videos. And I'm a little bit torn on if the next video is going to be a two-parter or the last video of Oak Hollow, so do stay tuned for that. Like I said, I am very inspired for our next build. I feel like we are ending really strong with this island, and I don't know, it makes me so happy how many new faces that this island has brought to the channel, and I appreciate every single one of you for being here. I appreciate all of you who leave sweet comments and everyone who joins for the Twitch streams on Fridays. I just love the community that we're building here so much, so I would love to have you join it as well. Once again, if you are not yet subscribed, do feel free to subscribe and join this community. It would mean the most to me, as well as leave a like on the video because it helps out the channel a lot. But I will see you in the next speed build, so bye friends!